Hi guys, my name is Borodante, and this video is a part of a giant journey of me trying to finish the biggest painting of my whole life, Black Widow. I started working on it 2 years ago, and on this channel I went through 4 big versions, restarting every time because it just didn't work. But now I'm planning to spend 2 weeks in a row finalizing the best version I started this fall. And this is the first part of a 2-part update on how things are going to finally end this infinite search. So here we are. I'm kind of like in the middle of the process yet, and I decided to make this update video because I don't really record myself when I paint right now, just to have the 100% focus, and I think it's working really well. It really lets me kind of think in a bigger picture, make decisions on a higher level. Instead of just trying to solve something that doesn't work, I can just look higher and decide that that's just not the way to go at all, and change things completely, using 100% of my brain just to paint. That's a thing. That's why lately I like to experiment with, switching between this kind of recording and background voice and everything, just because I get to try any kind of painting from different angles, being more focused or being more sort of sober, like here. That's actually an advantage of talking to you guys as well. So there's not only the downside when I'm talking to the camera, but also a benefit that I actually have to talk things through and I have to make everything make sense. So using both ways, sitting down and just being alone with a painting and thinking about it as much as I can with my full focus, and at the same time, talking to someone about it gives you a very different perspective. So that's very interesting. I'm kind of experimenting with that now. Now, before I jump into it, a quick word from this channel sponsor, Wingfox, and their really interesting new tutorial about faking 2D environment using 3D. Gavin O'Donnell is an Irish concept artist working in the field of animation and video games. He worked on the projects for Netflix and Savage Interactive, the creators of Procreate. And Gavin is here to show you the way he's creating highly stylized illustrations using Blender. I especially like this course because it's actually aimed at the beginners that really want to start using Blender but don't know how. Gavin will show you the best shortcuts and the most important things specifically for creating a beautiful artistic base for a future illustration. You'll be using a lot of interesting shortcuts and add-ons, and then making the whole thing work together using Photoshop. I highly recommend this tutorial if you want to start using Blender for your illustrations. So if you're interested in that, check out the affiliate link in the description. This course will be $89 when it fully comes out, but before that you can purchase it for $39. And of course there's an extra $10 discount code in the description as well. But back to the Black Widow. So this is the progress I'm having so far after, 1 day of working on it. Can't even say full day, is just a day. And yeah, I did quite a lot of changes, went all over the painting, added a lot of details to the bowls of the nests. They now have a lot more details, plus I started introducing a bit of a fix to the scale, like the perspective. Because in the old version, even though the huge room goes really deep into the background, like far away, these nests, they don't really become smaller as they go further away. And that really killed the perspective. So I made a few of them a bit smaller, and I think that really helps. I need to probably do more of that. The same thing I'm thinking right now is the kid over here, the tall kid at the very distance, plus some big kids behind the fighting ones to the left. They are way too big. They're also killing the perspective. It feels like a small room because everyone is just really big. We need to see really tiny kids closer to the end of the room. That's what's gonna make it look big. Otherwise, what is this? So yeah, I also used a lot of references for the clothing of the kids. So these new wrinkles on the kids that are really close up to the camera, they take up a lot of space in the canvas, So these wrinkles, they really need to give you something to look at, and it should be legit, not some weird... There's so much wrinkles in this painting. I need to make sure it's, looking good. And an interesting side note about looking up references like this. It's really hard to find someone, stretching the clothing, wearing a nightgown like that, like a Victorian nightgown, but also not just standing straight like this, but actually doing something. Or to find anyone wearing anything close to that, like somewhat free clothing that doesn't really, repeat the shape of the body, but actually being hanging like that, and also being a thin cloth. There's so much things about it that needs to be just right to be a good reference, because you need exactly this kind of wrinkles. Everything else has different wrinkles. The closest I got to this kind of poses in free clothing is like karate fighters or something like that. They actually stretch their clothing. But the karate outfit, the kimono thing, it's really thick cotton. It doesn't give you the wrinkles you need at all. So anyway, I've spent a lot of time trying to Google a good reference for some kind of outfit that would work with that, and I ended up just using Pinterest, really. It's the only place that actually gives you legit photos of people in clothing and all that stuff, because that's pretty much what Pinterest specializes on, I guess, or something. Anyway, it's a lot easier to find any kind of reference. In Google, it's just an endless wall of these stock photo services constantly. And that's not what I want. It's very different. It's not made to show any kind of wrinkles. It's made to show some typical stories, It's so lame. It's really hard to find anything because of this cancer of stock photography filling up all the results in Google Photos. But Pinterest doesn't have that at all. They don't have any stock photography in their results, which is really good. So yeah, I also did a lot of work on the face of the widow and her arms and the dress. Changed a lot of stuff about the skin, made a lot brighter shadows. I think it works way better, and a lot of you guys recommended that as well. The shadows were very high contrast, but that's actually how I paint frequently. I like to define the anatomy details or any kind of details in a very high contrast, like close to full range, and then I zoom out and adapt it, like color correct it, just overlaying with lighter colors overall, or darker if I need to. And in this case, the widow's face and arms, they need to be really pale white. So I just added a lot of this perfectly selected light orange-ish color. Really worked well. I still think that the eyes need to be smaller though, right? Something a lot of you guys said as well. The eyes are a bit too anime scale, so I need to tone it down. I'll try to do that, although I'm not 100% sure. Like, these eyes are not exactly impossible, maybe a little bit exaggerated, but generally it's just big eyes, I think. But it's just that they might be not the perfect fit for the character. So I'll see about that. I think I added only one kid so far, and I need to add a lot more. Crawling on the balls of the nests as well, on the surface, so we would see them actually coming out and getting closer to us. More of them hanging on the strings from the ceiling. And yeah, like fill up the room with more kids, and very important to keep the scale right. So I hope that'll be something that I'll be able to pull off. So yeah, overall just trying to find good rendering, introducing reflections now, Fresnel reflections and little highlights. So that's why the widow's face looks a lot more finalized now. I added actual sweat on her temple areas, or what are these called? On the nose, on the eyeballs, and some blood marks as well, having some highlights. So the face looks a lot more finalized this time around. And doing the same kind of stuff to the rendering of all the kids. The hands, like any detail like a finger at a big angle, becomes more reflective, giving a better understanding of the geometry of the arm. That's an important part of the rendering of geometry. It really introduces a lot of more realistic, more immersive and three-dimensional definition to the shapes. And yeah, also experimented quite a lot with the hair of this girl in the right corner of the image. Really interesting, like really threw around a lot of sharp, small brush details to make things like define planes and shadows, and then working to make it blend in. A good way to build details, a lot of them quickly and with good definition of planes, which is something I lose a lot of the time. And this time I really wanted to make it work, to actually let you see the planes, group certain details into more of a global shapes. So that's why the hair now actually has these definitive separate areas of a darker and brighter. And later it will be very easy to add a little bit of stray hairs here and there, some reflections, some shadows, and it will immediately become very realistic and cool looking. But yeah, the main goal to me right now is to make the picture work like this better. Right now, there's still a lot of stuff missing in it. Something's just not really bringing the picture together in this area, like around the widow, these nests and everything. Like at the bottom, it's kind of looking like a dance of everyone, but then I need to blend them in better into the widow. So I don't know, maybe I need to add more kids somewhere around there. And yeah, the top, the ceiling is too separate, and I keep like dancing around it, trying to add a kid here, a kid there, kids inside of the nest, but the connection in between them, the in-between kids, that's something I really need to add. So that's the plan for now. I'm just looking for solutions to make the whole picture work, like really soberly thinking about all of it, because that's something I was really missing out on recently, and I think I might really fail the picture if I don't do this a lot. So yeah, hopefully by the end of this episode, I'll be really close to finishing this, and I think the next week episode will also be the Black Widow, and it will be the actual final episode, putting an end to this giant journey. So for the rest of this video, I'll be showing you another 24 hours of work I've done on the painting, following this little bit of working on the clothing that I already showed you. And the last 24 hours actually turned out to be very productive and giving me a little breakthrough in terms of, I guess, the brush work. So as I was working, I noticed that my hand was cramping a lot. Like really from stressing the muscles or something, the drawing hand started really hurting. And my thoughts were like, I guess I'm done or something. This is it. Now I can't paint for a while. For some reason, my hand hurts. Because that happened before as well, every once in a while. But this time I decided to look into it. Two things I changed. First of all, I forgot that in tablet settings, I had pressure sensitivity set to firm, which means I had to apply more pressure to get over 50% opacity of the brushstroke. So I reset that and immediately that thing improved. But another breakthrough was in actual Photoshop. You may notice at a certain point I'll be using the brush settings panel a lot in Photoshop. That's because I'll be constantly tweaking the minimum value for pressure control on opacity. So I usually always use my brush with full range of control with pressure on flow and opacity. I really like using the opacity control because it lets you search in these foggy silhouettes. If you press slightly, it will create a semi-transparent, consistent layer. No matter how much you scratch in the same place without releasing your brushstroke, it will always remain at the same opacity level, like a watered down separate layer of a brushstroke kind of thing. And that helps you search things in certain layers. And I kept on using this brush setting for everything, always. It's just my default brush and that's it. And specifically when it comes down to like working a lot on the project, just hours and hours with no breaks, I started noticing that this is not useful at all. Using opacity control, when you're rendering details, it's actually really good to either completely turn off the opacity control and just have it at 100% always, or raise it like I usually raise it up to like minimum of 75%. So when I press slightly, it's 75% opacity instead of 0. And that actually surprised me a lot by changing the way the brushwork looks. It looks a lot less digital, and each brushstroke, when it's raw, just appearing raw without me chopping it back and forth to create a custom shape. When it's just a plain straight cylinder of a brushstroke, it appears more natural, less digital, and that's really good. The brushstrokes sort of appear as these sandy, ghosty looking spots that really blend together in something that appears more like a photo effect of lighting or something like that. It really works much better for applying details, rendering materials, and lighting. So that really improved my workflow yesterday. Not to mention that without strong opacity control, I really don't have to press very hard with the pen to create new details. So when I was adding new kids hanging around the room, it was very easy. And it's something very liberating or something about being able to quickly create solid yet controllable spots anywhere you want. So you can quickly come up with new objects. It's sort of easier. When it comes down to such a big painting, you keep having to add new whole objects. And that's, for some reason, there's a certain extra step or some kind of block that somehow makes it hard to start a new object. It's like a decision. But when it's easier to make solid brushstrokes, everything becomes like the same thing. Everything is the same object, and you can easily cut into objects, separate them, create new ones. It's like the whole thing becomes like your big clay sculpture, and you can do anything you want with it. So that was really cool. That kind of changed my brushwork a little bit. Everything became a bit more aggressive and more expressive brushstrokes, more geometrical as well. So yeah, looking forward to finishing the painting this week with this slightly but greatly tweaked brushwork. And for now, you can see what the whole thing is coming down to. Added more kids, more details on the cobweb on the ceiling next to the nests. Completely changed the face of the fighting girl really close to the center of the image. She really bothered me. Her face was so bad. Now I think it's shaping up much better. Worked on a whole lot of hair of all the kids, dropping new details everywhere. I see a kid that has no wrinkles or hair strings or something. I just immediately drop it in. Kind of feels like nothing can stop me mode. Really cool. Really excited about diving into the process with no breaks or anything. Just having almost 2 weeks for just working on this big project. Thinking everything through. And of course, guys, if you have anything to say, any kind of ideas, if you see that something is going the wrong direction, please let me know. This is a good time to say anything. I'll literally keep on working on this for the next 3 to 4 days. And yeah, looking forward to your comments, and we'll see you in the next video of Black Widow next Monday. Bye!